Good morning, comrade. You're listening to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3. This is your weekly Good Morning Comrade. Jeff here on the show. We got to get I got to get like a running total of the times that you were on here, because I know you're in a pitch battle with Mark Allen Derry for like the most frequent guest on the program. But yeah, Jack Reno Sweeney on here for probably about his 10th time, right?
Yeah, something like that, rounding up.
We've been on the air. Actually, you know what? We make 6 years this month on the air. And you and Mark Allen are probably the two most frequent guests.
Yeah, we got to count them up. Congratulations on 6 years. We got to do a clip show and we'll count them up.
Oh yeah, we're going to go find all the deep cuts and all the crazy stuff we used to say, like all the embarrassing things that we were doing, like figuring it out and it sounded terrible and all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like baby radio show Jeff and baby radio show Robert, and like also when Scott and Aaron were on the show more too.
Yeah.
How you been, man?
Been good. It's been a very eventful 2025 so far. A very eventful new era.
We are getting it. We really are getting it from every conceivable end. Like this, like I don't know, man. Like we really. I hate to like be sloppy and like make like Roman history comparisons, but like it feels like we're in a Caligula era. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, like those really shitty emperors that we, like
we're in our megalopolis era. So like a really weird, twisted, lib dementia boomer brain version of the fall of the Roman Empire.
Well, yeah. And then like, I don't know, man. Like you have the sorry, I didn't even mean to get into this, but I also saw they had one of these. Let's just get into this, and we can circle to Cuba in a little bit. But I saw this flyer for something called Welcome Fest. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
It's apparently like some DC brain, like dork coded. Kind of, it's one of these things. Just like what the solution to this like rising tide of like fascism from the right is we need to do centrism harder, and it's like one of these like Alyssa Slotkin, like Matt Iglesias, Glusenkamp Perez like deals to just make it so that the real answer to this problem is to be more responsible and not to actually like demand anything. Oh, here's the lineup. It's June 4th, 2025. Mark the calendar. We should all go in DC. Welcome Fest, June 4th, 2025. Responsibility to win. The featured speakers include Alyssa Slotkin, Jake Okencloss, Marie Glusenkamp Perez, Tom Swazi, Richie Torres, Adam
man.
Josh Barrow, David Schur, and Matt Iglesias. Doesn't this seem like a fun time?
The stars are all here. That's I don't know. I mean, it definitely started in the first Trump administration, but I don't really understand what the whole like centrist lib obsession with having music festivals for boring podcast people and like the most anodyne, annoying Congress members alive. Like I guess you see a bit of that on the right at like Trump rallies, but you don't see like left-wing podcast festivals.
I imagine
it's a weird phenomenon.
Well, the left wing, if like I imagine if like lefties in it would be dorky as hell. But like the Trump rallies, at least like back in like 2017, 2016, 2015, it looked like like the people that went there, they were completely and utterly politically confused or whatever. They didn't really understand what was going on, but it looked like at least they were having fun. This seems like a horrible time. Like I wouldn't want to be there in a million years.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you cannot deny that. Like a Trump rally is kind of like a Fish concert, you know,
Yeah.
where like people are tailgating. You know, like a Fish concert, there's probably like a tank of nitrous buried in the parking lot somewhere.
I imagine it was like
Um,
going to like the jazz fest. I mean, not the jazz fest, the crawfish festival, or like the oyster
yeah,
festival in Saint Bernard Parish, or like one of those. Just like
yeah,
a bunch
yeah,
of people like seeing these like kind of you know the cover bands or whatever playing. You got a big crowd, and everybody's like slurping crawfish and drinking beer. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, that
But
seems
here
like
you're in this case, you're going to like a hot like park in full sun,
yeah,
you know, like that probably has no beers, like one of those festivals,
yeah.
to like listen to Matt Iglesias talk.
$7 waters or something like that.
Yeah. What if they go full like Woodstock 99 and just like it's like just like a total disaster for like just a bunch of wide-eyed weird centrists,
Yeah.
like Twitter kids, you know, that like have like Twitter handles like Nikki Haley Stan or
Yeah.
like Hicken Looper Head or something, you know, like and they just like
The
get Woodstock
Buttigieg,
99 into cynicism.
the Buttigieg boys. um, like again, like I don't know, man. Like the whole thing about like the Democrats and with the like the lib side of things is they are allergic to having fun. They don't want to have fun, and I'm like, come on,
Yeah.
if you want, and like obviously, like fun isn't necessarily anything that's like revolutionary or any kind of political indicator. But if you want to recruit people, or if you want to have like motion to recruit normie people, like you cannot be the stuck up, stick up the butt like losers. You cannot
Oh
be
yeah.
the nerds. You need to be out there, and it looks like you need to be one of two things. You need to be either effective. You need to be like like power walking, like you're gonna get the thing that you're demanding, and you need to be approachable. And again, I don't know, like when Trump is out there talking about like random weirdo things, like I don't know, like he's describing a Tesla or something like that. He sort of like introduces the terms of these things so that the 90-year-old like person can understand it, so that any single person
Yeah.
can understand it. And Democrats are like, you know what? We're gonna write a book called Abundance, and we're just gonna like
Yeah.
explain it to you in the most annoying like loser jargon you can possibly imagine. And like anytime that you have any kind of disagreement with it, it would be because you don't understand it, not because you have a disagreement. It's because you don't get it.
Yeah.
You
Like
don't
what
understand it.
but like yeah, like I'm like I'm still just wondering what type of person like you would meet at an event like that. Like what is this
Yeah.
called? A Welcome Fest?
Welcome Fest. Yeah.
Where is it? Like is it in a park
DC.
or something? Like
Yes.
what's the deal with this? But but like what I don't get is like, you know, like you go to like a Trump rally and you know they got chants, they got like regular characters, but like what are they doing when Matt Iglesias shows up is like what does he say that gets the cheers?
I
You
don't know.
know, like
Well, so if you go to welcomestack.org, you can get all the information, including the Studio Ghibli AI promotional videos,
oh no.
images that they're doing. But here's if you I'm reading straight from welcomestack.org, which is their Substack. The largest public gathering of centrist Democrats, Welcome Fest showcases the array of ideas, policy, and leadership hailing from the centrist faction of the Democratic Party. It's also our way of bringing to life the posts on this Substack. Along with our partners,
Bringing posts to life.
yes, we're bringing the post to life, baby, just like you always wanted. We're creating an in-person space for all of us that features many of the elected leaders and centrist ecosystem influences we write about on Welcome Stack and feature on the Depolarizers podcast.
No, like, do they just like go crazy when Glusenkamp Perez brings up the dumb banana thing
Yeah.
that she likes to talk about? Like they just start like going crazy, like yeah,
It's like when
deregulation.
it's like when Stone Cold Steve Austin like kicks his boss, like kicks Vince McMahon in the nuts and gives him the Stone Cold Stunner and gets a beer. It's like,
Yeah.
Grant Perez, let's go.
Yeah, the equivalent of the folding chair is like some scheme involving the earned income tax credit or something like that, you know?
Yeah, the path to citizenship and like the 50-year process by which it would take to become a U.S. citizen if you migrate from a war-torn America that was destroyed by
Oh
American
yeah.
Empire. Speaking of places destroyed by American Empire, by the way, not necessarily destroyed, it's one of the few places in the world that has actually been able to survive and thrive in spite of its very close proximity to the United States, and despite the fact that it has been under an embargo from the United States for what, like 60 years now. Our
Yes.
boy Jack just came back from Cuba. What's going on, man?
Yes. So, yeah, I came back from Cuba. This is my second trip. I've been back about 2 weeks now. And yeah, like you said, they've been under embargo by the United States for over 60 years now. The longest embargo anywhere in the world.
They're number
Uh,
one. They are number
yes,
one.
yes, and historically, I found out recently that in the 80s, Cuba had the fourth highest standard of living in all of Latin America.
That's pretty
And
cool.
while they still have a lot of things that Cuban people can benefit from on the island in terms of second to none healthcare. Life expectancy on Cuba is still higher than the United States. Um,
Well,
you know,
life
Obviously it's
expectancy in the
cheaper.
United States is going down,
Yes,
and I've
yeah.
also seen that it's like reaching almost like 1900s levels of life expectancy at this point because of how terrible our healthcare system is and how actually terrible it is to be here, despite the toys and treats that we get.
Oh, absolutely. The combination of costs and knock-on effects, both in terms of the healthcare system and on people's health of the
Mhm.
COVID pandemic, cannot be overstated.
Mhm.
In the United States. So while the United States life expectancy has declined, like you said, significantly in the last 5 years, in Cuba it's remained relatively stable,
Mhm.
even though the effects of the embargo are now more pronounced than ever.
Mhm.
I don't want to mince words here. You
Mhm.
gave a great introduction of Cuba and about how it's thrived in the face of American imperialism breathing right down their neck. But the conditions are worse than even when the Soviet Union fell in
Mhm.
1991, right now, which was the last big major economic downturn for Cuba. That led to the first declines in the standard of living, going down from fourth in Latin America to
Mhm.
uh, lower than that now. I don't know what it would be now, but anyway, all that is to say, so Cuba has been on the state sponsors of terrorism list
Of course.
since Trump's first term. Even though many
It's
people,
because of it's
including
because of all of those Cuban attacks that happened in America, not the like white supremacist riots or
oh
whatever.
yeah,
Like
no, it's an
we have all these
absolutely
Cuban attacks that we have in the United States that just really are keeping us scared and looking under our beds at night.
right. And there are all kinds of organizations that are totally kosher in the United States, but Cuba has been on the state sponsors of terrorism list because they are accused of sponsoring terrorism as a result of hosting peace talks between factions in the ongoing Colombian conflict. A few years ago. So they were
That
hosting a
sounds
peace
like terrorist
conference,
activity. That sounds like
right?
terror activity, if you ask me. Like hosting a peace conference. I mean, that's really the kind of stuff that it's basically
Right.
what's happening.
And they send doctors all over the world where they're very appreciated, and they'll go places that many doctors in many countries don't go. But anyway, all that is to say, so even though people, including President Obama, asked Biden throughout his term to take Cuba off the state sponsors of terrorism list, he waited until his last week to do so.
Mhm.
And Trump, within 12 hours of being inaugurated, put them back on the list. And it should be noted that our Secretary of State is Marco Rubio,
Mhm.
who's descended of right wing Cubans in Miami, who has been a long time foe of Cuba,
Mhm.
even though his family left before the Cuban Revolution.
Mhm.
But he and his family have long opposed post-revolutionary Cuba and done a lot to prevent it from having any degree of, success, stability, or prosperity, to try to make an example out of Cuba. So while they're standing very strong, people still have homes. There's not like a homelessness epidemic there way there would be during a downturn here. While people still have access to medical care, there are food shortages. Um, you know, uh, People. When I went in October of 2023, you wouldn't see anybody begging, period. And now you do see people begging. So that's, and I went there this time with people who've been many times over many decades, and that's a very, very new development. And it's a result of the state sponsors of terrorism designation, which makes it very difficult for Cuba to do things like buy fuel on the international market, to buy bulk food commodities on the international market, and obviously being a island, there's a lot of things they need to buy. They do a lot with very little, and they do have a lot to be proud of. One thing the Cubans never have a shortage of is pride and dignity in their national project. But yeah, I can't sit here and tell you that the situation is peachy over there.
No,
But
no,
I
no.
can definitely tell you that the situation is caused not by some deficiencies of the Cuban people or even the Cuban government, but primarily, above all else, the United States' ongoing war, really economic war against Cuba. So,
Yeah. You talk about tariffs. I mean, just economic blockade. I mean, but I do want to like rewind a little bit because you mentioned Obama. But before we do that, you're listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. Jack Reno Sweeney is our guest today. We're talking a little bit about Cuba. And one of the things that I did want to bring up is that Obama in his presidency, for all of the many faults that there were, one of the things that he did do was roll back some of the economic sanctions that were on Cuba that when, again, Trump took over in 2016, those were rolled back as well. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
right. So Obama opened up relations with Cuba to their fullest extent since the Eisenhower administration. He, allowed Cuba to reopen an embassy in the United States, which does remain open. And he allowed cruise ships and tourism and direct flights for the first time.
Yeah, you could fly to Cuba. It was crazy.
Yes, you still can do so out of select airports. Um, Cruise ships don't go there anymore. Obama also allowed people to bring home rum and cigars, which Trump banned, because God forbid we find out that there are good things that come from a socialist economy.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Trump reversed a lot of those, reversed a lot of the economic openings. There were medical exchanges were facilitated under the Obama administration that had to be put to a halt under Trump, including very promising support for maternal health research in Chicago, diabetes research, and so on. So the embargo is obviously devastating for the Cuban people, but it also keeps us from a lot of life-saving medical technology, including treatment for diabetic ulcers that has reduced the incidence of amputations by 70%. So imagine if 70% of amputations as a result of diabetes that happen in this country were just, rendered totally unnecessary. It would be life changing for so many. They've got some really promising anti-Alzheimer's drugs. They have a lung cancer vaccine that if you take it, I think once every 6 months when you have lung cancer, and extends life by a significant degree and quality of life as well. And these are all things that we don't have access to, not because Cuba doesn't want to share them with us. In fact, they really do want to share them abroad. It's one of the main things that drives their economy is their biotechnical sector. But we are precluded from that by the embargo by our government.
So yeah, and I mean, you mentioned a specific incident that we can talk about when it comes to Cuba exporting their medical expertise and resources abroad. As you mentioned earlier, at the beginning of COVID, they had sort of sent essentially bands of doctors to places to treat COVID. And also, it's one of those sorts of things that you also see when we have hurricanes come through and
Hmm.
in the Gulf, and Cuba is right there in a very unfortunate position geographically when it comes to hurricanes, because they take a lot of them right on the chin. But if you see a lot of the death tolls and a lot of the damage tolls that take place, they're much lower when they
Right.
hit Cuba than when they hit places in the United States. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, there are a few reasons for that. First, so as you know, traditionally, what
Mhm,
we do in the Gulf Coast when a large hurricane comes to town is evacuate.
mhm,
What we're finding out with rapid intensification of storms and them also just moving faster and being more frequent is that we're having to adapt to shelter in place, which we're really not used to. Cuba being an island, you can't evacuate.
mhm.
So they've been doing shelter in place for a long time. So there are lots and lots of, the way we used to have like fallout bunkers,
Oh, for
including
the
our city
bomb.
hall in New Orleans for nuclear bombs. People know in Cuba where to go in the event of a serious storm,
Mhm,
and they go there. And the embargo does make rebuilding difficult because things like concrete are very hard to get.
mhm,
But they have in Cuba been having to resettle communities because of climate change and certain areas becoming more vulnerable to storms, and have done so in a way that I think far surpasses how we do it. For instance, if you have to be relocated, you still own and have the right to access the land you left, which is really helpful for fishermen. Whereas, in the Ile de Jean Charles in Louisiana, which was a Native American community that was resettled, they had to give up title to that land. And lo and behold, they're building fishing camps on it,
mhm,
and on this land that belonged to their them and their ancestors for centuries. So Cuba has adapted very, very well to hurricanes. Not just in this new era of crazy storms, post Katrina, but they've really mastered it. Going back a long ways, they have a very sophisticated civil defense, which is their equivalent of FEMA. And the last thing I'll add is you brought up, how they respond to storms and disasters abroad. And when we're talking Cuba and when we're talking uh, hurricanes in New Orleans, I have to always mention their offer of doctors and support to New Orleans after Katrina.
mhm.
And they were actually prepared to get to New Orleans before FEMA would have been able to get there. And I've met people that told me they were going to be part of that brigade and they had their bags packed and were ready to go when President Bush rejected the offer of aid. So this is something that the Cubans are very, very good at and love to offer support to other countries in the Caribbean and elsewhere that need that support. And we have a lot to learn from them in terms of sheltering in place and, equitable resettlement, which is just becoming, unfortunately, a necessity in a lot of places.
Well, yeah,
Um,
the
yeah.
history of Havana and New Orleans is like one of those things that we know very like in the popular sort of like understanding of things is not particularly like well understood, but the history of Havana and New Orleans is actually quite intertwined
Oh, yeah.
on sister cities.
Yes. Before Miami was a significant city, it was, a very small town.
Mhm,
And the closest American metropolis to Havana and to the rest of Cuba was, as a result, New Orleans, which is, a bit farther, but not much. You could actually take a ferry from New Orleans to Havana for a period before the embargo. Um, and there's a cultural connection in the music for sure.
the
Uh,
buildings look exactly the same. Like
yes, the
if you're
architecture is
downtown
extremely
Havana and
similar.
you go into the French Quarter, it is exactly the same.
Yeah. And even things beyond that, like I actually met someone, a Cuban, who's studying to become, like a tour guide. He was a student. he was pretty familiar with New Orleans. Was like, oh yeah, it's a lot like Havana, isn't it? There's like trash a lot of places, and a lot of buildings are kind of run down. And I was like, yeah, yeah, you kind of got it. So yeah, yeah, yeah. It's you find that New Orleans has, both in the Spanish architecture, just in like vibes, has a lot in common with those Caribbean port cities, even though we're just a bit farther north.
Mhm. So, just to sort of, we've been talking a little bit about generally about Cuba. Oh, sorry. You listen to WHWLP New Orleans 102.3, bottom of the hour. Jeff and Jack Reno Sweeney here on Good Morning Comrade, talking a little bit about Cuba. So I guess if you would be so kind, please describe sort of the purpose of this trip that you took to Cuba. What did you see? What kind of happened? We can kind of dig into the details, but sort of lay out the sort of the parameters of this visit you did down there.
Absolutely. So I was part of a nationwide youth and labor delegation.
Mhm.
The first time I went, I was part of a national DSA delegation, and there were DSA members part of this delegation I went on most recently. But it was a bit of a broader base, like I said, focused on labor unions and youth organizers. And the occasion was May Day, so we were able to see the traditional May Day procession in Cuba, which is the
They
march.
actually celebrate May Day there.
Oh
Interesting.
yeah, and in Cuba, so it's not just like a Labor Day. It's also combined for them with like the 4th of July and like Mardi Gras, really. Like the night before, a lot of people just stay up all night until the march, which is pretty early in the morning. So like when I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to go through security to get to where we were watching the parade, and everyone was out already at 3 a.m. I couldn't believe it. So it is really like the night before Mardi Gras day when you like
Yeah.
stay up for Zulu or something.
Yeah.
And even, but it's also like very patriotic because, they're celebrating their national history and their revolution, but also, there are flags for every country that Cuba has good relations with.
Nice.
But the parade itself that you watch is led by and made up of the labor unions in Cuba. So it's led by the CTC, the Cuban Trade Union Confederation. But each union has like a contingent there. And so the cigar rollers union has like a big paper mache cigar, and like the airport workers union have a big, plane and air traffic control tower. So it's this really beautiful celebration of, what Cuba's accomplished over the decades since the revolution, and of, the labor that that drives Cuban society. It shows it's imagine if the 4th of July, instead of celebrating, the military in the parades, was celebrating, the Teamsters or the sanitation workers or the flight attendants. It was really
We don't
amazing.
celebrate workers in America. We like tell them to get
No,
back to work.
no, and even
We're
on
lucky
the
they get a day off. You know what I mean?
exactly, and even on our ostensible Labor Day, it's a day where you're you're not like, if there are parades, it's not really celebrating, the proud history of American labor. And every other country in the world celebrates Labor Day on May 1st, on May Day, which commemorates an event that happened in the early United States labor movement.
Yes, it's our history too. It's like
Exactly.
our history, like not to be American centrist or whatever, eccentric or whatever, but like a huge part of like the reason that May Day is a thing is because of Chicago.
Yes, the Haymarket
Mhm.
affair, uh, and in honor of the Haymarket martyrs who were executed, falsely accused of bombing a May Day labor protest in Chicago. Um, and I don't think it's American centric to point that out, because it's a beautiful example of international proletarian solidarity
Yep.
that it's still celebrated on May 1st everywhere else. And
Except for, and everywhere except for America. Weird.
exactly, and in the United States, the government deliberately chose another day apart from May 1st to break solidarity across borders between amongst laborers, amongst the labor movement.
Mhm.
Also Labor Day is like conveniently located between like the 4th of July and some other holidays, but it was very explicitly done to break uh, you know solidarity with the international labor movement, and it was really beautiful to see that international solidarity alive in Havana. Like I said, I was watching from Revolutionary Square, the like center of Havana, with a lot of other international delegations. So I met trade unions from around the world. One of my favorite groups that I talked to were sanitation workers from Paris with the CGT labor union, which is the labor union, the further left labor union in France. But there were people from all over the world. There were lots of people from Ghana, people from Angola, which has a close relationship with Cuba. It was amazing. Like really, like I said, like 4th of July, Labor Day, and Mardi Gras all in one. Like hard
Sounds
to
like a lot of
compare. Also,
fun.
the largest march of any kind I've ever seen.
Oh wow.
Hundreds of thousands of people participating in the march itself. So that was the marquee event. But we met with Cuban journalists, met with Cuban student leaders at the University of Havana, which was really interesting to get to know what student organizing is like in Havana, and what getting a degree in a country that you can't access half the internet is like. And you can't access half the internet because American hosts block it from Cuba. So getting access to things like academic journals is quite difficult.
Yeah.
Um, but
I'm sure in Cuba they're throwing they're denying diplomas to students who are critical of the slaughter in Gaza, right? Is that happening in Cuba too?
quite well. Well, of course you're joking, but quite the opposite. The president of the University of Havana came out to their Gaza solidarity encampment, which the University of Havana students did a Gaza solidarity encampment uh, in solidarity with Gaza, of course, but also in solidarity with the American students. They were very explicit about the fact that they were supporting the American student movement as well,
Yeah,
because international solidarity is very, very important. It's an essential part of the Cuban national character is solidarity with the rest of the world.
that's
It's
incredible.
very unique in that way. People talk about left wing Irish nationalism in a similar way, where the Irish are in solidarity with Palestinians and colonized people all around the world. It's
Yeah.
very similar in Cuba. So
Yeah,
yeah, their universe
I
has.
brought that up because we literally in VCU in Richmond
Mhm.
recently, like this past week, it came out that they will be denying the diplomas to students who participated in some of the Palestine protests this past year, and they had a
Right.
vision of it this couple of months ago, and they're getting hit. There was a kid from NYU who
Hmm.
recently spoke at one of these commencements of their graduations. He basically, called out for solidarity with uh,
Right.
Palestinian civilians, and called for an end to the slaughter, and it was denied his diploma. And it's just like we're in
Yeah.
a situation where, and again, I hate to be cliche about this kind of stuff, but like when people do their fear mongering about places like Cuba, places like China, and I'm not trying to be sloppily comparing these things, but like they like to talk about these places like there are no human rights there. We live in
Hmm.
America, and these things are going away. We're throwing people into people who are American citizens who have green cards, even not that it should make a difference, but they're supposed to be protections from um, these horrible things that are happening, and they're just throwing them into prison camps in El Salvador. uh
Yeah.
don't tell me that you know China or Cuba doesn't respect human rights when you're doing that stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. No, it was I had the opportunity to talk to a Cuban law student who was studying essentially to be what would in our system be a prosecutor. It works a little bit differently, but he was studying criminal law. And the experience of watching him react to me telling him about Angola penitentiary here
Oh yeah,
was really something
our
else.
living, breathing plantation that still exists in the
Exactly.
year of our Lord 2025. Yes, I'm
He was
familiar.
aware of really bad prison conditions in the United States, but wasn't aware of how much of the real connection to the history of slavery. In
Oh,
fact, in Cuba, prisoners are entitled to the same minimum wage. They don't have voting rights. That's the only really, when it comes to limitation of rights of prisoners, that's really the only thing they have in common with the United States. But they are able to earn the same wage doing similar labor. There are far fewer prisoners per capita in Cuba than the United States for
well,
sure.
that ain't
But
saying much. I
yeah,
mean, we're
and
we're we're
yeah,
really good at throwing people into jail.
especially in Louisiana,
Yeah, we're number one here, baby.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So there were so it was what was some oftentimes the most interesting was when it was difficult to communicate even with translation because like an idea was so foreign to them. For instance, the issue of family separation, because we were talking about with some representatives who had supported the creation of the Cuban Family Code, which is the most progressive set of laws governing, marriages, relationships, parental rights in the world. It lets you like formally legally recognize like any type of arrangement of people who love each other as a family. It's a pretty fantastic piece of constitutional law. But one thing they talked about is how that was difficult to communicate across the linguistic and cultural barrier was that in Cuba, if a child is children have rights that go beyond what we understand as parental rights. So a child can emancipate themselves, for instance, if they are gay and their family doesn't accept them, or trans and their family doesn't accept them, and they can choose, an aunt or uncle or close friend, family friend, or friends' parents to be their legal guardians. And someone in our delegation brought up the issue of family separation in the context of Black families being more likely to be separated by child protective services.
Yeah.
And and it took a while for them to be able to have that conversation uh, and really engage, because just the idea of there being a systemic bias of one type of family being more likely to be separated than another on the basis of race in Cuba was totally alien to them. Like
It's not a
they hadn't
language
even
barrier.
considered it.
It's not a language barrier so much as it is a conceptual barrier.
Absolutely. Like, Cuba does have, and that's another thing about Cuba. In the United States, we tend to, regardless of which side of the political spectrum of the mainstream parties you're on, we tend to you can't say that America isn't great in some way. It's either make America great again or America was always great are essentially the two types. Whereas in Cuba, they will always say like Cuba's not perfect and we can improve in such and such ways. So they won't say that racism is totally done away with. But imagine if we started with the civil rights movement in this country and never backed down, or started with Reconstruction for that matter in this country and never backed down.
Oh yeah.
Cuba started that process in the 50s and 60s and never backed down. They made mistakes, they've admitted to mistakes, but it's always like it's a real commitment to racial justice that goes beyond anything we can imagine. So the idea of these systemic barriers is really, really unusual to them. They don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah, and this is in light of, again, I mean, America's got a star-studded history of failed reform movements,
Hmm.
be it Reconstruction, like you mentioned before, be it the Civil Rights Movement, which applied, civil rights to people, but those material rights that should have gone along with that as a recognition of the wrongs that took place. Call it whatever you want. That there was no sort of reckoning at that point, and also we're seeing in the United States even now a recognition of in the post sort of South African apartheid era,
Mm.
where there was a civil rights revolution in a very similar way, but the redistributive component, that piece, the material piece,
Right.
never really materialized. It's really something that never took root, and you're actually seeing reaction to this when it comes to white South African, whatever is being quote unquote refugees, being taken in by the United States because the white genocide is happening there. Wow, the United States actually cares about one genocide in the world, and it's it's the South African Afrikaners like complaining about it. Like there's been my brother in Christ, they've been bombing Palestinians for 18 months, actively, kinetically, but for
Right.
70 years, 80 years.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. Like like I saw one of those so-called white refugees was, like a granite mine owner in South
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Africa.
Real working class guy, a real granite mine
yeah,
owner. Just like it's probably
famously.
friends with Elon Musk's Emerald Mine. Like,
Exactly. Famously oppressed group of people, white South African mine owners, famously hard on their luck. I mean, honestly, like, so I'm sure a huge chunk of these so-called refugees, these South Africans are horrible people. I would not be surprised at all if all of them are, but like I kind of have a certain amount of respect for the grift on their part. Like they
yeah,
were like, "Oh, here's my way of getting a
yeah,
free trip to the United States." Because I know a lot of South Africans actually. I used to go to a summer camp that had South African staff,
sure.
of various cultural and ethnic backgrounds. But like South African, like most of them just watch American TV and want to live in the U.S.
Yeah, they're
You
Amerifacts.
know?
They're Amerifacts just like us, baby.
Yeah, they're very similar to Americans
They
culturally
love they
speaking.
love the Nintendo Switch too. They want
Oh
their
yeah.
jalapeno poppers. They want to watch Gordon Ramsay on television. They want the
Oh
same thing
yeah.
that we do.
Yeah, they're gonna fit in just fine, is what I'm saying. Like we
Yeah,
won't have to worry
the
about
transition
yeah.
will not be that complicated. It will not be
Right,
that difficult.
exactly.
They just need to find a
Exactly.
place and settle in. They'll be okay.
So I kind of have to respect the grift
The
to a
hustle,
certain
yeah.
extent on their part. But yeah, obviously the political the whole
I mean,
like desperate grasping at
it's a
straws.
rhetorical giveaway to neo Nazis,
Oh
essentially.
yeah, oh yeah, like the desperate grasping at straws to you know, uh it's like a you can tell all of these people just desperately in this administration just desperately are trying to do like Twitter dunks, but in real life and with
Yeah, with
real
through like
people's
government
lives.
policy, like
Exactly. Like with lives in the line, like it's really horrifying, but also deeply pathetic.
yeah,
Like this is like a way, like, oh yeah, but what about genocide of white farmers in South Africa? It's like it's just a online argument brought to real life. You know what I mean?
mhm,
uh it would be like easy to laugh at it if it wasn't like used to justify something so horrible.
yeah.
But the part that is easy to laugh at, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, is just how Elon Musk is like apparently just obsessed with like making sure everyone swallows his narrative about the whole Boer issue
Oh man,
by
kill the
training
boy.
Grok on it. And even
So
Grok is like, I don't know about this.
yeah, yeah. You know what I love about that too is that like Elon wants to be like Mr. I'm like rah 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 America, like hell yeah,
Yeah,
coal rolling or whatever, just sort of
I
like
know.
I'm the American guy. Look at how American I am. I love America. Da 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 da. But then when South Africa comes up, he's like, oh no, I have to go like put this fire out there too. I have to be South African now. Or
Yeah.
when he's supporting the German right wing party. He's like, got
Oh
to be
yeah.
doing Germany now. Like he just decides to like morph like a chameleon into whatever form of like nationalism is
Yeah.
is convenient at the time. And like, I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
every time I see a Cybertruck, I'm just like, bro, you bought that just because you want to glaze this biggest loser on earth up. You
yeah.
know what I mean? The most
Yeah.
fraudulent, phony person who basically bullied his daughter and his other kid to like play Overwatch with them, marry him. You know what I mean? Like, come on,
He's
bro.
so pathetic. Like I mean, it was always weird, but just the fandom around him just gets harder and harder for me to like imagine what type of person likes him.
I am a
Um,
proud OG Elon hater. I'm a
oh
proud
yeah.
OG Elon hater.
Well, like you never liked him, or you turned
Never,
quickly, or never?
never,
Wow.
never. I'm just like seeing this guy who's like a billionaire who came through PayPal. I'm like, oh, this guy is gonna like pretend that he like works on the shop floor building these
Yeah.
Teslas. He designed them in a lab. Like, come on, bro. That's not how it
Yeah.
works. Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, like the whole space exploration thing, like him talking about that and getting big with that hit me at the right time in terms of like my
yeah,
Star Trek
yeah,
fascinations.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I was a bit, taken under the
Oh,
spell of that,
it was a
you know.
branding exercise more than anything else. Like, I mean, it was designed to fool people. So, like, if you got
And
fooled
he
by
he
it, it's not
did he
necessarily your
did
fault.
take on like liberal
Yeah.
cultural
Oh yeah.
affectation early on,
Just
like
like who else did that too? And I'm not saying that you were affected by this in any way, but like JD Vance.
yeah, oh
Liberals
yeah, big time.
love JD Vance. He was all when he was talking mad crap about like how horrible it was to live in Appalachia and how
Yeah.
like addicted to to drugs they were, to painkillers or whatever, opiates. Like liberals are like, oh yeah, feed me that stuff. I love
Oh
it.
yeah. Well, like that's another JD Vance is another, and Elon Musk. They're both examples of this kind of phenomena. Like conservatives love to, like blood and soil type conservatives that
Mhm.
are like that want to homestead and live the trad life. And if you've ever seen the people on Twitter that are like America with only 40 million Americans, like those types who like criticize like liberals as like rootless cosmopolitans. Like it doesn't get more rootless than like JD Vance or Elon Musk. So like Elon Musk, he's not even like his family doesn't even have real roots in South Africa. Like they were racist Canadians
Yeah.
that moved to South Africa because they loved apartheid so much. And
Mhm.
then when
And it's
apartheid was
apartheid. We
over,
got to
they
get in
went
on this
back.
apartheid. We got to buy an emerald mine here because we can exploit workers better than
Yeah.
anywhere else in the world.
Exactly. So like that's as rootless as it gets. So that's why he can just hop around the world just doing fascism because that's what his family's been doing for like generations now.
Generations. Yeah, he's just
And like
inheriting
JD Vance, I mean, one thing he has in common with some of those libs that really pushed hillbilly elegy is he's like the striver version of that. Like he like ready to like sell out everyone
every
in his
single one of
hometown
them.
to go
Every
to
single person who will be at Welcome Fest would do
yeah.
the exact same
Yeah.
thing as JD Vance if given the opportunity. I'm
A
talking to
lot
you,
of them
Matt
did.
Iglesias.
Matt Iglesias is that type of guy. Like, and I think JD Vance went to one of the Ivies. I think it was Yale Law or was it Columbia? I don't
I think
know.
it was either Harvard or Yale, maybe
Yeah, one
Columbia.
of those, which is like what he's now calling like one of the bastions of DEI wokeness. Like it's
Meanwhile,
just also
while at the same
performative.
time, his daddy Peter Thiel is like, "Oh, we need people to go to only these institutions. We can't trust a single person who hasn't gone to one of them."
Yeah. Peter Thiel still gives out that like reverse scholarship where he'll give you money to drop out of college. But like, like these guys just they look down on you if you don't go to school. Like sure, if you win the lottery, the startup lottery, which is becoming more risky than actual gambling. Like you probably make more money at this point without,
Yeah, playing the
flooded
roulette
that
wheel.
market. Yeah, playing the roulette wheel, yeah, betting it all on green, honestly, at this point. But yeah, no, it's it's crazy. We're at this like this crest of conservative cultural influence, and it's definitely going to recede at some point. But it's not fun to wade through right now. It's
Yeah,
like
and it's
that.
something that can only latch on. It's something that can only like hook itself in. We're getting away from Cuba, which is fine. We can talk about some other things now. But like it's one of those things that can only hook in is if there's no like political alternative to it. So like
Yeah,
we again, like the Democrats have just decided, the liberal establishment party has just decided that like, you know what, bro? You guys have fun. Go ahead and do all the
yeah,
stuff, like destroy everything that we've ever pretended. So because we need to make sure that we punish the people that voted for you. We're not going to fight anymore. We're not going to do anything. But then when Qatar decides to give Donald Trump like a freaking airplane or whatever, they're like, you know
Oh
what?
yeah.
Actually, we care about that. Chuck Schumer like wakes up from his coma,
Yeah.
and what's it called? And it's not because necessarily they care about the airplane. They care about the fact that, oh, actually, he's annoyed with Netanyahu,
Yeah. Yeah.
who's like basically becoming a political liability for him. He's
Yeah.
potentially doing something about that. And the Democrats now have to come out and be like, no, you have to continue. This slaughter actually does have to continue. Not to say that Trump is a dove or anything like that. I'm not
Right.
insane,
Right now.
but like he understands like political wins much better than the Democrats do. It's like ridiculous how
Absolutely.
the degree that this is.
And the Gulf monarchies, you know, like your Saudi Arabia, your
Yeah,
UAE, your Qatar, they you know, they're some pretty nasty nasty
they're fine with
leaders
killing
too.
Palestinians.
Absolutely.
They're totally fine with it, but they actually understand that parts of their populations are against it,
Yeah.
and they can use that as leverage against the United States and to draw out concessions.
Yeah. And
And like Trump doesn't want
and
to
they
deal with
know
that,
how
and the
to
Democrats do.
exactly. And those Gulf monarchs, they know how to appeal to a guy like Donald Trump. Give him a nice plane. Like
Oh,
Donald Trump is the American version of a Gulf monarch. You know, he
yes.
makes everything gold. You know, he has the gaudy, awful buildings. Like they're the same type of guy. Like it struck me like a bolt of lightning in a way that it hadn't. But I should have known. Remember the picture of the orb where he's with like the
Oh yeah,
crown prince of Saudi Arabia and the orb? Like I should have known then. But like Trump is just you know,
that's
Gulf
his
monarch
people.
that
That's
wears
his
a suit.
people.
Like that's what he is.
Yeah.
It's the same type of guy. So it's not that much of a surprise to me that they are able to appeal to him and you know extract what you know some kind of concessions from him. But yeah, you're right. Like it's just the things that Democrats choose to spring into action on. It's just you know like
It's
obviously the president shouldn't accept a plane from a foreign government,
sure.
but like you know like why is this the line? There have been so many lines that they didn't pay attention to.
I guess my
You know?
point is in bringing that up is that the political project of the Democrats is so one unclear and two undesirable that
Yeah,
the only thing that has any kind of forward motion in all of this stuff is the right wing revanchist party.
yeah,
Because, and again, this is another part of it. The you know liberal party, the Democratic Party, does everything it can. Could you imagine if like Bernie Sanders had taken over the Democratic Party and he had decided that it was time to actually implement something like Medicare for all, which would be a fairly like you know not the most radical reform that you can possibly
right,
imagine. Having a government healthcare system like so many other states have. The Democrats they would not do the thing that they're doing for Trump, which is like roll over and let him do whatever. They would do everything on earth that they could to stop it. They would
oh
do
yeah,
everything that they could to stop it because that's something that actually they care about much more than dying Palestinians or the fact that they just rolled back Afghani temporary protected status for Afghanistan
right,
refugees who we destroyed that country. And we're
right,
basically saying all the refugees that came here after we destroyed you, get the hell out. Like the Democrats don't give a damn about any of that. But when it comes to actually doing something that would actually help somebody, they cannot stand for it. So and when the Republicans are doing those other horrible things, it doesn't really matter. We can just sort of like let them do it. We don't care.
yeah. No, the thing that is astounding to me is how often like Hakeem Jeffries and I believe Chuck Schumer as well have just said like, well, we're not in the majority. Like, what do you want
Yeah.
us to do? Like,
Can't
what
do
are we
nothing.
supposed to do about it? It's like, yeah, but they find ways to do it when they want, and it's endlessly confusing to me. And I've actually seen it very recently in a prominent way on the hyper local level, in the local Democratic Party here in New Orleans, which is a whole other rabbit hole. But
Oh yeah,
they are way
that's
more
a bad one.
comfortable. They are way more comfortable working across the aisle, as they say, with Republicans than they are with
Their own
making
purported
peace
coalition. Yeah.
within their coalition with progressives, you know, and Matt Iglesias types are like the ultimate type of guy like this. Endless concessions under the guise of moderation to the right, but a total unwillingness to win if it means having to bring the left flank under the wing of the political project.
The only thing they have to smoke for is the left.
At the end of the day, you have to conclude who someone is based on who their enemies are. If they've chosen to make their enemies the left, then they can't be part of the left in any meaningful way. You can't even really call them centrist if they're actively opposing left-wing ideas, even moderate left-wing ideas, like you brought up, Medicare for all, something the rest of the world has. They are on the right, guys like Matt Iglesias and the Welcome Fest people. Richie Torres, absolutely. Richie Torres working with Beitar closely for a long time, a fascist Zionist organization, a self-proclaimed fascist organization. These are right wingers, they're happy to drag the rest of the party with them, as they have been since the Clinton era to the right.
Yeah, if not before. Well, as we start to sort of wind down, I guess we have about 2 minutes left. As far as sort of like tying this whole deal together when it comes to Cuba, the United States, and all the other things to happen, do you have any sort of like last word to sort of leave us with? And where can we find some of the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, I do. Definitely follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JRS4LA. Got a lot of cool stuff coming up that I'm a part of in DSA and beyond that I'd love for people to follow up with me on. If you're in New Orleans, me and some of the other people that went to Cuba are planning a public debrief of some kind. So if you follow me on social media, we will let you know about it, and we will talk about our experience more in detail, and the history of Cuba and the embargo, as well as what you can do if you want to support, and how you can travel to Cuba, because that is something you can do. And that's one of the messages I want to leave to your audience, is that going to Cuba is actually, even right now under Trump, simpler than you might think, totally legal, and very much worth doing, even under these tough conditions right now on the island. So if it's something you've ever wanted to do, you can do it. Message me on social media, and I will, wherever you are in the country, and I'll do what I can to connect you with people and organizations that are doing delegations. So that's my pitch on Cuba. And final, like, kind of anecdotal fun story. I got to watch Cuban TV for the first time. And of course, there's no commercials, but what I found most surprising was they are bootlegging American Netflix originals.
Oh, like what was on?
I was watching the brand new Netflix original 0 Day, which is a Robert De Niro like miniseries where he's like a retired president who's like a stand-in for Joe Biden.
So he had brain damage, essentially.
He has brain damage, but it's caused by Havana syndrome. Like a stand-in for Havana syndrome.
Maybe I need to watch this.
And it was showing on Cuban TV. Like they're watching our TV shows, and I'm sure they want a Netflix subscription, but they're just putting it on. They're just putting it on the public television service.
Yeah. I bet you they love that stuff.
That was fun. Yeah. I mean, it was awesome. It was a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that would be a pretty fun show to watch, especially if you are a Cuban living in Havana.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Jack Reno Sweeney, thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Comrade. Listen to us every week on Saturdays at 10 a.m. GoodMorningComrade.com. You can get all of our information. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is, Twitch, all the stuff. Thank you for listening. We love you. Bye-bye.